know that true crime is dark and disturbing, so why do we love to watch? And are there real-life consequences for the genre's explosion? Welcome to MsMojo, and today we're examining the evolution of true crime. We'll be splitting this video into 4 parts: crimes of the century, serial killers as celebrities, police and propaganda, and the rise and fall of the genre. If you love sitting in the dark listening to tales of real-life murder, you're not alone, and this video is for you.
Eric and I killed our parents together, so I'd say that makes us pretty close.
Some crimes are so shocking and controversial that they force us to examine who we are as a society. But with thousands of crimes committed daily, how does one particular crime become a cultural moment?
Just another frenzied day for the swarms of journalists feasting on the story of the decade.
We can define crimes of the century through examples: the Black Dahlia, the Unabomber, the Casey Anthony trial. These sensational crime stories generate culture-wide discussions about the meaning of good and evil, truth, justice, and moral responsibility.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
A crime of the century is a story, and the way the media tells this story affects how we understand it, and in turn, how justice is executed.
You can only imagine the pressure to have this crime solved.
A lot of people didn't do their jobs.
We falsely convicted them, and we walked away from our crime.
Of course, there have been highly publicized crimes throughout history: the Jack the Ripper murders, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid's famed robberies, the Lincoln assassination. But the term trial of the century was first used in reference to the Lizzie Borden case of 1893. Borden was charged with the slaying of her father and stepmother in their shared home near Boston. The brutality of the act, rumors of a strained relationship between Lizzie and her stepmother, and the affluence of the family all placed this case at the forefront of crime convo. How could a fine young lady blast a hatchet through her parents' heads after all?
Did you kill father?
Police misconduct, a botched investigation, and improperly documented evidence led to Borden's acquittal, leaving her the, quote, happiest woman in the world. But not without swirling rumors and public speculation. To this day, Lizzie remains the prime suspect in this case.
I am innocent. I leave it to my counsel to speak for me.
Theories about her psychological state or motive have spiraled in the media for decades, ranging from fugue states to a relationship with her maid, or revenge for being asked to wash windows on a hot day. While the facts of that day have perhaps died with the victims and with Borden herself, legends surrounding this mystery, this justice unserved, endure well into the 21st century. Fact and fiction blend in imagination. Is this a story of a feisty young woman seeking control of her house? A psychopath who walks calmly among the upper echelons of New England society? An elaborate ruse to cover sinister or socially upsetting truths? The story has taken on many lives in the media, casting the reality of events in different hues for the entertainment of consumers.
Give me the hatchet. God damn it, Maggie, give me the hatchet.
So what sets this crime apart? Why is this a crime of the century? Well, let's look at the themes. Extreme violence, allegedly committed by an atypical perpetrator, an affluent young woman, involving members of the upper class. Violent crime in a quiet neighborhood, police misconduct, and explosive legal results deemed contentious by the court of public opinion. It's mystifying and shocking. Other infamous cases also touch on these same themes. Think the Lindbergh kidnapping, the O.J. Simpson murder trial, and the wrongful conviction of Amanda Knox.
Do you know anything?
No, I don't. I wasn't there.
Again, with these cases, there is a difference between the core facts, the legal truth, and the narrative webs woven by the media.
It's a business for the media. It's a business for the people selling t-shirts. It's a business of selling fame, selling gore, selling attachment to something bigger than yourself.
But all crime stories are not covered equally, and this can be attributed to a range of factors. For one, cameras were not always allowed in courtrooms. After Bruno Hauptmann, the Lindbergh kidnapper, appealed his case in 1935, alleging that aggressive media coverage had poisoned his jury against him, state legislation was amended to restrict photography in courtrooms. While the judge dismissed Hauptmann's claim, he did raise a good point. The way evidence and the accused are presented can manipulate their significance to those who perceive them. This is true in both trials and in the media. After Hauptmann, many but not all states banned live broadcasting altogether. But these restrictions effectively ended in 1981 after a case in Florida where filming was permitted saw 2 police officers charged with burglary argue that live coverage of their case would deny them a fair trial.
Although you can look around the courtroom and not see the camera, the participants will know, and then the distortion process sets in.
The case went to the Supreme Court, which ultimately found that the Constitution does not block broadcasting in courtrooms, and the risk of jurors being influenced does not provide enough grounds to ban courtroom broadcasting. This ruling allowed states more freedom to experiment with filming and broadcasting trials live. While this legal history may seem a bit dry, it's important because it effectively created a whole new genre of true crime going into the 80s and 90s: gavel-to-gavel broadcasting, trials on TV.
Did you kill your father?
Absolutely not.
There was dead silence in the crowded courtroom, all but the unwavering voice of a teenager professing his innocence.
We see this first in the 1987 trial of Joel Steinberg, a disbarred lawyer, and his wife, Hedda Nussbaum, charged with the murder of their illegally adopted daughter.
About 36 people carrying candles for Lisa, hoping the flame will ignite some changes in the city's adoption system.
Nussbaum received legal immunity for her testimony, the defense arguing that her complicity in the murder was the result of battered woman syndrome.
He isolated me from my whole family. For several years I didn't see them, and from all my friends. This is typical of abusers do that.
This is a highly emotional case, which brought issues of domestic violence and criminal responsibility to the forefront of public discourse. Additionally, the characters involved are successful, educated people. The drama of the story plays off of the disparity between their bright image and their secret horrors. And most significantly, it centers on the tragic, senseless death of a child. The case created a media frenzy, and stemming from this gavel-to-gavel phenomenon, we see many similar high-profile trials broadcast this way in the 80s and 90s. Pamela Smart, the high school teacher who had 4 students murder her husband in the early 90s, is one example.
The verdict spells a giant relief for the family and friends of Gregory Smart, the victim in one of the most publicized trials ever in New Hampshire.
Court TV was launched in 1991 and focused on live courtroom footage with commentary by anchors. The channel rose to prominence with their coverage of the trials of Lyle and Eric Menendez in 1994, convicted of killing their parents, and then the O.J. Simpson trial the following year.
I didn't know who the suspect was. Anybody could have been the suspect at that point.
Of course, we can't talk about crimes of the century without talking about the O.J. phenomenon. This is a major turning point for true crime. From the infamous Bronco chase to if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit, this story made true crime radically mainstream, no longer a niche mystery subgenre. The viral moments from this case, the clash of characters, his curated celebrity image versus the portrait painted by the prosecution, took on a new life on screens around the world.
In the United States, and particularly in California, journalists can cover a court case as freely as they might cover football. The trial by media is in top gear.
In fact, more people watched the Bronco chase than the Super Bowl that year. And when the trial's verdict was broadcast live on TV, over 150 million people tuned in. In other words, about 57% of the American population. The stranger-than-fiction true crime saga was beyond a sensation in its time, and beyond the veneer of a celebrity whodunit. The trial spoke to larger issues of race and class within the justice system, and brought these questions into mainstream discourse.
Why would someone set him up?
Because he got money, they want to see him broke.
During the trial, scheduled broadcasts were cut to feature coverage of OJ-related affairs, and while viewers initially expressed annoyance, over time, we see significant overlap between soap opera viewership and viewership of live trials. This is interesting because, in many ways, the Simpson trial set the stage for this crossing of genres, the TV drama and true crime documentary, blending fiction and nonfiction. Because what followed that decade and into today are new directions of true crime that lean away from previous genre conventions like reenactment and detective stories into formats that effectively combined dramas written for TV with the purported objectivity of live footage, offering the depth of fact in the dressing of a soap opera.
The last time that you saw Paul and Maggie's when y'all were eating supper? Yes, sir.
public interest in the Simpson trial created a legacy for the coverage of other high-profile crimes well into the 21st century, and significantly, established a public appetite for these types of stories. One direction we can trace this shift is the emergence of reality court shows like Judge Judy, Divorce Court, and The People's Court, revived in 1997. These shows feature comparatively banal legal cases, presented with personal drama and characterizations woven in.
Real cases before a real judge.
And now, enter the courtroom of Judge Mathis.
While the cases are real and the characters are non-actors, these shows are cast and cut to make exciting TV.
Hey, I'm talking.
Okay, my apologies, Miss Girl.
Miss who?
I'm
sorry.
She's not a girl. It's Miss Toller.
It's Judge Toller. Be quiet. I have a question.
In addition to starting this new wave, the OJ trial also had an educational impact on the American public. The immense coverage of this trial of the century led to much greater awareness and understanding of how the legal system actually works, and educated audiences about its jargon and proceedings.
The entire country's been mesmerized by this case. People are riveted on it, on every bit of information and every bit of pseudo-information.
So the target demographic for this type of content was geared up and ready to go. The post-OJ wave of courtroom reality TV reproduced a few key elements of that live trial viewing experience, namely, an organic whodunit structure that audiences could anticipate, judges and participants cast for their charisma and entertainment value, and at the end of every segment, a verdict. But the issues unpacked in these shows are not focused on celebrity murders, car chases, however slow, or explosively controversial evidence. These shows look mostly at divorce and custody issues, property law, small claims.
I don't give a rat's behind about what you're going to show me. I'm not giving you another penny.
We said before that not all crimes are covered equally, and this remains true. These are not crimes of the century. But this wave of genre TV is just one example of the impact a trial of the century can have. The Simpson trial changed the landscape of an entire medium and created massive public awareness of the justice system. And, perhaps most importantly, it highlighted how the media is an industry that must always work to replicate its own success. It goes both ways. Our hunger for this type of media pushes content creators to make more of it, which creates a broad landscape of constant crime coverage, which distorts our impression of real-life crime and its prevalence.
A look at what's fueling a new wave of gang violence in New York City.
And now the body count's never enough.
There is also evidence to suggest that the Simpson trial increased public appetite for the relatively new 24-hour news cycle. CNN launched in 1980, but its ratings increased 500% over the course of the trial, with viewers seeking constant updates. In their ordinary lives, most people seldom interact with crime, mostly learning about major events and statistics through the media. 24-hour coverage of true crimes, trials, and even fictional crime dramas creates an exaggerated impression of its prevalence in real life. For example, in the 90s, we see a sharp uptick in media coverage of crime overall, while actual crime was in decline across the United States. While shows like Cops or The People's Court and much daily news coverage are not about crimes of the century, we can see how a major case like the O.J. Simpson trial can send ripples through our media landscape and in turn affect our perception of the justice system and crime itself.
I think justice was served. Not everyone here is happy, however.
So why does any of this matter? Well, just as fact and narrative blend in the courtroom to determine legal truth, the same dynamic plays out in the ways that media controls these stories, on both sides of the political spectrum. This is not a big conspiracy theory about indoctrination. It's about looking at the bigger picture, beyond CNN, beyond Cops, beyond O.J. Simpson. And even if no one is sitting watching 3 hours of live trials every day, the larger landscape of crime media creates a slanted impression of the pervasiveness of crime, who commits it, and how it affects the day-to-day lives of its viewership. These impressions play into people's feelings about the effectiveness of the criminal justice system, as well as political questions about the death penalty, sentencing, and police funding.
Bail reform is a divisive topic. We want to help you understand what's happening on our streets.
Because crimes of the century are not isolated events, but are connected to the biggest questions of the culture at that moment.
Our audience has been here most of the morning waiting to see the verdict, and lots of people, as you saw, had some pretty strong reactions.
We can see how the Harvey Weinstein scandal contributed to the rise of Me Too and cancel or accountability culture.
Survivors and activists calling the verdict a moment of reckoning for the Me Too movement. Rose McGowan tweeting, "Today is a powerful day and a huge step forward in our collective healing."
Derek Chauvin's murder trial spoke to deep historical issues of race and police brutality, and how the justice system repeatedly fails people of color.
They are dying! They are killing our people! Change has to happen!
A crime becomes a crime of the century because of the questions it raises. Who are we? How do we define good and evil? How do we define justice? How do we make our society a better place?
This is real life. This woman really died.
But as we chew on these heavy hitters, we also need to keep in mind that there is a difference between the truth and what we see on TV. The way the media represents real crimes is especially charged when it comes to serial killers. To say a serial killer is a celebrity is not to say he's an admirable character. It's to say the way we talk about them, think about them, and represent them in media is comparable to how we talk, think, and represent other famous figures in pop culture. But how does this impact our understanding of crime and justice? In an era so saturated by media, does the line between actual crime and true crime start to blur?
Every news organization across the country was now interested in Ted Bundy.
Serial killing has pretty much existed everywhere and always, but the English term was coined in the 1970s. While there is some debate about who exactly named it, what's important for us here is what it describes.
Monster, right? But what do you really know about him?
A serial killer is generally understood to be a murderer with 3 or more victims, with a time gap between so-called killing events. This is what separates them from spree and mass killers. Spree killers operate in a short time frame, and mass murderers are more interested in scale. Pop culture interest in serial killers is generally thought to have started with Jack the Ripper in the 1890s. These killings in the Whitechapel neighborhood of London generated tons of pulp media, rumors, stories, and general cultural hullabaloo. But the fact that the term serial killer entered the law enforcement lexicon in the 1970s is not random. This marks the beginning of what has come to be known as the golden age of serial killing in the United States, 1970 to 1999.
It's happened in New York. The son of Sam killer terrorized the city for months. With a .44 caliber revolver, he shot couples in parked cars.
Famously, John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy, the Golden State Killer, David Berkowitz, aka Son of Sam, Jeffrey Dahmer, BTK, Richard Ramirez, the Zodiac Killer, and others were all active during this period. Investigative historian Peter Vronsky claims that over 80% of American serial killers were active during this golden age. Why? There is no one definitive answer, but this era generated a huge proportion of the true crime stories we consume today. So let's start with this. What makes a serial killer?
You have to kill Eileen Wuornos because she'll kill again.
Quick facts. 92% of serial killers are male. Most commit their first murder between the ages of 25 and 34. Serial killers rarely target victims outside of their ethnic group, but often target the opposite sex. Psychopathy and sociopathy are real conditions, but those living with them do not necessarily become serial killers. And not all serial killers are necessarily psycho or sociopaths.
Like an addiction, you keep craving something which is harder, something which gives you a greater sense of excitement.
But experts say that people who could be predisposed to violent impulses, like psychopaths are, can be socialized into acting upon them. For example, if a kid with psychopathy is exposed to physical abuse at a young age, they may be more likely to reproduce this behavior themselves.
And what do you do to the animals, Beth?
Stick them with pants.
And since empathy might not come naturally to them, they may struggle to identify this behavior as wrong. Children who experience severe trauma can also develop patterns of emotional suppression that can lead them to victimize people later in life, struggling to feel empathy or remorse.
As I'm sitting there with a severed head in my hand, talking to it, and I said, well, wait a minute. I see old paintings and drawings of Viking heroes talking to severed heads and taking them to parties, old enemies in leather bags. Part of our heritage.
If we go back to this ironic term, this golden age, let's look at the timing. Men aged 25 to 34 in the 1970s were born in the 1940s and 50s. World War II and the Korean War destabilized many young families across the United States during these decades, as many people returned from war with immense trauma. Many men did not return at all, leaving behind young families with their own trauma, higher rates of poverty, and so forth. Experts have pointed to this wave of destabilized homes as one factor potentially leading to the rise of serial killing in the generation that followed, because these children were more frequently neglected or exposed to violence and abuse. Experts have also pointed to the Great Depression as having a similar effect. There are, of course, many different experiences of war and returning home. But for instance, Dennis Rader, aka BTK, Richard Cottingham, the Torso Killer, and Joseph D'Angelo, the Golden State Killer, all had war veteran fathers and deeply unstable family homes.
When he drank, he was almost like a different person. My dad struck all of his children all the time.
It's a gross oversimplification to say that one thing directly leads to the other. But given the high rates of abuse and childhood exposure to violence reported by convicted serial killers of this era, a connection begins to emerge. Violence and trauma can cycle across generations.
When Richard's father would get mad, he would get the hammer and hit his own head.
He got mad at Richard. He beat the hell out of him. He would get my dolls, I remember, and he would always act like he was going to poke out their eyes.
Other factors that experts point to when examining the Golden Age are the massive cultural shifts of the 1960s and 70s. Rising youth and countercultures led to more transience among young people, more runaways, more recreational drug use, more hitchhiking, more women traveling alone. In other words, the pool of potential victims simply grew. There were suddenly a lot of young people wandering the world alone, linking up with strangers, going on adventures, not necessarily wanting to be found. Draft dodging during the Vietnam War is also a factor here, as a lot of young people were traveling under fake names, using fake backstories. This made it harder to identify them once they were found, or to have them labeled missing in the first place. The construction of the interstate highway in the 1950s is also a factor. Increased mobility, hitchhiking, isolated roads, lack of surveillance. All of these social and cultural factors made this generation more likely to kill, and more easily killed.
I just stabbed to death and cut the throat of an innocent young woman. She was 19 years old, and her roommate in the trunk who died right after that was 18.
This era is the basis of the true crime frenzy we're living in now. Because while serial killing itself has sharply declined in the 21st century, we are still producing and consuming media about this era of killers. Mindhunter, Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil and Vile, The Good Nurse, and Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, are all examples of this fascinating nostalgia. As these stories keep coming back into circulation with younger actors, cooler aesthetics, and more violence, these real-life figures become further immortalized in pop culture memory.
That's so hot.
But the relationship between serial killing and celebrity culture doesn't just live in legacy. Serial killers, like the rest of us, are conscious of pop culture, Hollywood, politics, history, and so forth. These are the cultural factors that shape our social world, and celebrity culture is a part of that.
Was that Rick Dalton? Who? The guy from Bounty Law.
Who, Jake Cahill?
Yeah, that guy in the road was Jake Cahill. Rick Dalton played Jake Cahill in a cowboy show in the 50s called Bounty Law.
The showboating, performative Bundy trials where he represented himself and got married in court.
Carol, do you want to marry me? I want to marry you.
The Tate LaBianca murders being deemed the end of the 60s.
In a scene described by one investigator as reminiscent of a weird religious rite, 5 persons, including actress Sharon Tate, were found dead at the home of Miss Tate and her husband, screen director Roman Polanski.
These are pop culture moments as much as they are major criminal cases. Even during this golden age, serial killers themselves were aware of their notoriety, their overlap into celebrity culture.
Contrary to Section 78204 Florida statute, I'll plead not guilty right now, and you're...
During his peak as a celebrity murderer, Richard Ramirez signed his artworks Richard Ramirez, Night Stalker, reinforcing his public persona, his brand.
Do you think it's a little strange that these women are coming to see you?
No, because the majority is not necessarily correct.
Dennis Rader suggested his own title, an acronym for Bind, Torture, Kill, in his infamous letters to police. As Dahmer's murder pad was discovered by police in 1991, media rights were allegedly being sold within the hour. Exceptional acts and personas, public panic, and explosive media coverage converged to make killers into celebrities.
Why were you in the courtroom today?
I just wanted to see what he looked like. I think he's cute.
In the early 1990s, several factors came together to bring serial killing to the center stage of media. First, as we've already seen, the actual real-life problem of serial killing during this era. Second, the increasingly sensationalized coverage of these crimes, with identifiable figures and personas attached to them. The third is actually the release of The Silence of the Lambs, the book in 1988, then the movie in 91.
The 25-year-old daughter of Senator Ruth Martin, listed first as a missing person, is now believed to have been kidnapped by the serial killer known only as Buffalo Bill.
Thomas Harris's characters and Anthony Hopkins' portrayal were largely responsible for a resurgence of pop culture interest in serial killing in the 90s, coinciding with the crimes of Jeffrey Dahmer and Eileen Wuornos, two super publicized cases. This is when the golden age of serial killing starts to transition into a golden age of serial killer media. It creates a loop. Serial killing is happening, the media reports on it, serial killing becomes the thing everyone is talking about, the media capitalizes on the social trend by releasing increasingly bold, sensational stories, which in turn increases the social stock and marketability of real-life crimes and criminals.
Taking my life like this and getting rich off it all these years. It was used for books and movies and shit. Ladder climbs, the election, everything else. I'm not giving you book and movie info.
Reality and storytelling blend together in nonfiction media, amplifying the persona of the killer in the public imagination. What separates a serial killer movie from a slasher flick is who the audience is meant to identify with, the killer or the victim. Slasher movies are all about the terror of the victims and how we imagine ourselves in the scenarios we see on screen. Don't go into the basement, why doesn't she call the police, etc., etc.
I'm calling the police!
A serial killer movie is different. It is about the persona and the mind of the killer. This is who we identify with. Hannibal Lecter is a perfect example. Hannibal the Cannibal is not some guy in a hockey mask stumbling around with a machete. He is cunning, calculating, a master manipulator, a genius in his fields, both psychiatry and psycho-killing.
First principles, Clarice, simplicity. Read Marcus Aurelius. Of each particular thing, ask, what is it in itself? What is its nature?
Crime media often paints these killers as exceptional, almost superhuman, terrifying no doubt, but also impressive, set apart from regular criminals. Hannibal, for example, is certainly a monster, but he's also a genius who outwits those who try to contain him.
Jimmy, watch it, he's got it!
He is the opposite of so-called degenerate serial killers like Buffalo Bill, who is cast as incoherent, queer-coded, living in squalor, incompetent.
What the lotion in the basket?
A similar dichotomy can be seen in nonfiction coverage of crimes during the 80s and 90s. Murderer celebrities are often guys next door, middle class or affluent, active in their communities.
Jeffrey Dahmer is intelligent and articulate. That is what makes him so frightening.
The angle of their story focuses on their cunning, their ability to disguise their true form and walk among us, be part of our communities. Dennis Rader, for instance.
Rader was out there in the community hiding in plain sight.
In my mind, there was two people in that body. One of them was a husband and father, the Boy Scout leader. The other one was an absolute animal.
On the other side of this dichotomy, during the same era, we see a massive wave of reality and nonfiction media about the police cracking down on lower-level crimes. Cops, for example, was shot overwhelmingly in low-income neighborhoods, showcasing arrests of mostly people of color and immigrants.
Where did you just come from? From the projects?
Yes. You want to go home, Papi?
Are you calling me Papi again?
By Officer Mr. Damiano.
Celebrity criminals are often given an aura of exceptionality and genius, while the common criminal is anonymous, a symbol of moral weakness in opposition to the officers who arrest them. There are some serial killer celebrities like Eileen Wuornos or Ed Kemper who do not fit into the walks among us mold, but they are exceptional. Wuornos because female serial killers are rare, and Kemper because of the particular savagery of his crimes. But media coverage of their stories still reinforces the pattern. There is an angle to their stories that allows them to transcend common criminal tropes.
I am an American, and I killed Americans. I am a human being, and I killed human beings. And I did it in my society.
They're not mastermind geniuses. They are chaotic, tragic figures.
My mother, Diane, let me tell you something. She plopped me out of her belly left me with my grandparents, and we never knew her. I'm leaving. I'm glad. Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass.
But this is also a trope that allows serial killers to enter into pop culture history.
If a woman humiliates her little boy, he will become hostile and violent and debased. Period.
In the 2000s and 2010s, we see characters like Dexter appear, a cool and sympathetic serial killer who audiences welcome as their protagonist. Having become accustomed to the shocking and sensational tone of serial killer stories, we come to accept them as a part of pop culture. Shows like Mindhunter and Dahmer push this even further, featuring real-life serial killers as written characters with snappy dialogue and engaging personas.
Charles Manson, the most dangerous man alive. Hippie cult leader who programmed people to kill. In that book, he's got me so powerful, a look for me stopped his watch.
On screen, they are no longer real people who committed real crimes, but personas and concepts that become vehicles for the filmmaker's story, icons. Another essential piece of the celebrity system is this: profit. And not just how media companies generate profit from covering tragic and traumatic events, but the concept of murderabilia. Murderabilia is an umbrella term for collectible items connected to violent crimes and their perpetrators. This can be artwork by murderers, their possessions, non-evidentiary items related to their crimes. The more famous the killer, the higher the price tag. For example, a painting by John Wayne Gacy, a colorful portrait of his own Pogo the Clown character, sold at auction for nearly $13,000 in 2022. After the release of Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story in 2022, Dahmer's actual aviator glasses went up for auction at $150,000 US. Like Marilyn Monroe's lipstick, the items are only as valuable as the image they conjure, as the ghost of their previous owner. Marketability is an essential part of celebrity culture, and while there are laws passed in the United States that prevent criminals from profiting financially from their crimes, it doesn't mean that other people can't. This feeds into and incentivizes further celebrity worship of murderers.
Of course, Mr. Ramirez. My pleasure to welcome you to the Hotel Cortez. Let me show you your room.
Now, viewers who lived through these historic events might have a more nuanced reading of these true crime retellings. Maybe you watched those explosive trials on TV, or you remember seeing it on the news, so there's a clearer connection to real events. But for younger viewers who are learning about these events for the first time through aestheticized, bingeable, identifiable content, it may have a different effect.
It was very realistic, but props to Evan Peters because he did so well.
In the sea of docuseries and Dexters, we become more distanced from the understanding that these events are real. Real people died. Real families were destroyed.
The pain that you caused my family, that was my baby boy that you took away from me.
Many of those survivors are living and reliving their trauma whenever new content is released.
Every time I think that I'm done with the story, new stories come out.
Beyond that, it's essential to consider that there's a well-documented mental health crisis among today's young people. And treating real murderers as characters with their own misunderstood stories to tell can feed dangerous impressions about power and notoriety. The pressures of social media, an increasingly polarized political landscape, and a bleak outlook for the future have contributed to higher rates of depression and general hopelessness among young people. And although serial killing has declined substantially in the 21st century, mass shootings have increased dramatically, particularly in the 2010s. While news media has been developing best practices for covering such events to avoid giving notoriety to the perpetrators, it's essential that we apply the same critical thinking to the true crime and serial killer media we produce and consume today.
It's our responsibility to make sure that the stories of the other victims are not lost in the shuffle.
It's not just a movie, it's real. The other major players in true crime are, of course, the police, sometimes as the heroes and other times as the villains. So what's real and what's just propaganda?
The good cop, bad cop routine?
Not exactly.
Policing touches on a myriad of hot-button issues, and we're not here to tell you what to think about them. Instead, we're looking at how the representation of police in true crime has changed over time, and how these changes reflect larger shifts in our society. So let's dive in.
These are the men who serve the city of Detroit, working together as a team for the protection of the lives and property of the people of Detroit.
Law enforcement has existed in various forms throughout history, but as metropolitan centers expanded in the 19th century, policing became more organized, and developments in forensic science changed the game. Fingerprinting techniques allowed investigators to place individuals at a crime scene. The discovery that body temperature drops at regular intervals after death meant that time of death could be determined accurately. And developments in ballistics and toxicology made it easier to identify weapons used in crimes. By the end of the 1800s, instead of drawing conclusions from visual evidence or hearsay, there were methods for solving crimes that were scientifically reliable. There was now a real chance of catching the guy who did it. This is important because these innovations led directly to the development of the mystery genre, a major influence on true crime as we know it.
Inside, Houston found what scientists might call an anomaly. It was a partial print of an index finger, and it matched.
True crime had been around for hundreds of years before mystery novels, but in the 1800s, the genre's focus shifted away from tabloidy tellings of gruesome events. Crime stories became more about the puzzle, the method of solving crimes, thanks to new public interest in policing. Conversely, how to get away with murder and the perfect crime became topics of conversation in literary and academic circles. While there are many subgenres under the mystery umbrella, the genre typically revolves around a crime and police or police-adjacent figures peeling away the layers of secrecy surrounding its whys and hows.
It'll be very interesting to see if my deductions are accurate.
The genre's focus became less about, look at this sickening event, and more about who is intelligent and observant enough to crack this case. These Inspector Genius characters often have borderline superhero qualities, and an aura of exceptionality and superiority.
For the subconscious mind. It's like the bottom part of an iceberg, submerged beneath the sea. It's there, but you don't see it.
We don't say this as a criticism necessarily. Literary heroes are the heroes of their stories, and as the introduction of policing to rapidly growing cities brought more stability and accountability in areas of great change, it's no surprise that media featuring police had an element of hero worship.
Well, I figured you'd be glad to see me.
Glad to see you. Well, man, you just saved my life.
However, as with any media wave, mystery and detective novels in the 19th century also reflected biases in society at that time. Modern criticism has pointed to how the genre reproduces popular myths about crime, like the prevalence of murder, and that the superhero-ish qualities of the genre's cops sideline issues such as corruption and discrimination in police culture. This would not have been understood the same way as it is now, but in hindsight has become clearer. It's also worth questioning the trope of cop protagonists doing whatever it takes to solve a crime, even when those actions are immoral or illegal.
I shoot the bastard, that's my policy.
Does this trope normalize police misconduct under the rationale that it's for the greater good? Who does this greater good serve? Who does it harm? Again, we're not saying these characters aren't heroic within the context of their narratives. However, one can see how heroic police stories create a skewed impression of what good or normal policing looks like. So let's jump ahead to the next major innovation of cop content: reality TV.
Cops is filmed on location with the men and women of law enforcement.
This is an essential bridge between mystery literature and the true crime docuseries we stream today. Specifically, let's talk about Cops. In this reality show, camera crews follow police during the course of their shifts, giving viewers the thrilling experience of a ride-along.
It's a done deal. We're going to move in and do the takedown in this van here.
Hold on.
Get out of the car.
The lack of narration and background music gives it an air of unfiltered authenticity.
Get on the ground! Taser, taser, taser! Get on the ground, man!
Given the saturation of police reality TV since the show's debut in 1989, many might be quick to dismiss Cops as daytime trash, but do not underestimate its impact. Cops is one of the longest-running TV shows in American history, and its influence is enormous.
Why are you so sweaty?
I was watching Cops.
The premise and popularity of Cops hinges largely on its perceived objectivity, and the idea that cops are good guys and their arrestees are bad guys. The historical context is important because, remember, crime in the United States reached a broad all-time peak between 1970 and the early 1990s, so crime in communities was real, and this anxiety was in the public consciousness already.
Whether you know it or not, it's touching you somehow. Just look around. Look what's happened.
So a verite-style series where police arrest drug dealers and violent criminals seems like not only a positive for the community, but also has an aura of heroism to it. Fair, crime is bad. Violence is bad. Having responsible, accountable, and empathetic individuals working to keep their community safe is obviously a good thing. But here's where it gets a bit sticky. While the show is shot in verite style, the image of crime portrayed is not really accurate compared to actual crime statistics. For example, studies have found a major overrepresentation of men of color as perpetrators in the show compared to real crime data. Cops also overrepresents the number of violent crime arrests by nearly a factor of 4, and drug arrests by a factor of 3. It paints a racialized image of who is committing crimes in America, while showcasing the impoverished living conditions of America's poor and addicted. There is a clear dichotomy between the good guys and the bad guys.
And new bad guys.
Cops is just one show, and while it has shot over 1,100 episodes across 30 years in over 140 American cities, we have to look at the bigger picture. The so-called war on drugs that began in the 1970s introduced policies that criminalized crack possession far more severely, up to 100 times, than cocaine, even though crack is derived from cocaine.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one in the United States, the problem of dangerous drugs.
Crack was far more prevalent in lower income and minority communities at this time because it was much cheaper and easier to produce. So there emerged a heavily racialized profile of who was the face of the epidemic, and shows like Cops corroborated these stereotypes.
Do you think the police will ever be able to stop crack in the streets of this city or any other city?
What's more, Cops regularly depicts police busting into private residences, using tasers on suspects in custody, pinning suspects to the ground, stopping suspects on technicalities or random suspicion, and using this to justify investigating them for other crimes.
How many times have you been stopped and frisked?
7 times.
7 times?
Yes, sir.
And you're how old?
17. I remember them banging my head into this.
He says he's more afraid of the law than the thugs.
We're not here to give a case-by-case analysis of every situation on the show, but it's obvious that Cops represents this as good policing, or at the very least, standard.
You ain't gotta be aggressive, man. Not being aggressive, man. Just doing it the way I'm supposed to.
Within a cultural climate so concerned with crime, shows like Cops played an important PR role in justifying hardcore tactics in neighborhood policing, increased police power and budgets, and even racial profiling.
How many people have been told they fit the description by a cop? Raise your hand. Almost all of us, right?
It's worth mentioning that all police departments involved in the show are given editorial control over the final cut of the episodes. They can opt to remove anything that paints them in a light they don't agree with. So it's safe to say that what we see in the show is indeed how those cops wish to be represented. PR has and always will be essential for police because most people almost never actually interact with them. The publics they serve overwhelmingly form their impressions of the police and their effectiveness through media. So shows like Cops and Live PD provide entertainment, but also serve to paint police in a positive light. And reality TV aside, police departments themselves largely recognize media as an essential part of maintaining a positive relationship with the communities they serve. Communicating effectively about ongoing cases and being visually present in the community outside of active policing are legitimate ways the police use the media to maintain a healthy impression with their communities.
HEAL is a national initiative that works to bridge the gaps between communities, law enforcement, and those impacted by the criminal justice system.
In the 21st century, policing has become an increasingly polarizing topic, bound up with issues like systemic racism, gun control, the deeply political war on drugs, and the actual real need to protect communities from harm.
This drug thing, this ain't police work. When you're at war, you need a f***ing enemy. And pretty soon, damn near everybody on every corner is your f***ing enemy. And soon the neighborhood that you're supposed to be policing, that's just occupied territory.
The police reality TV genre has continued to explode, with seemingly endless action-driven shows like Live PD, police women of various cities, and cop-adjacent shows like Dog the Bounty Hunter. But an interesting counterpoint to this trend is the true crime boom of the 2010s, which typically leaned more into the thrills of mystery storytelling than the action-packed standards of reality TV. Many of the most popular true crime content of the 2010s, like Making a Murderer, The Keepers, and the podcast Serial, were heavily themed around police conspiracies, incompetence, or systemic inequalities leading to unjust outcomes. This wave of true crime approached police and criminal justice systems with a far more critical eye.
Law enforcement despised Stephen Avery. Stephen Avery was a shining example of their inadequacies, their misconduct.
A lot of true crime from this era also features cases cracked by independent researchers who are able to do the police's job, unhindered by corruption and bureaucracy.
And now we have something that the LAPD is going to really want, without all the bullshit, without having to go through 800 different levels of discovery and all that stuff. We've got Bob reacting clean to this hugely important piece of evidence.
Don't F with Cats, Hunting an Internet Killer, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, The Jinx, and again, the smash hit Serial are all examples of this concept playing out.
And it took me to a Facebook group, and it looked to me like it was focused on trying to find who was in this video.
I was like, oh, okay, this person wants to play a game of cat and mouse, and I'm up for that.
So why the change? Is it just a matter of the pendulum swinging the other way?
We didn't know where he lived. We were all in investigative mode.
We didn't have much time.
We need to stop him from doing this.
Well, we know that media acts as a mirror, reflecting the social concerns of its time. When metropolitan police were introduced and forensics expanded in the 19th century, mystery novels reveled in the puzzles of crime. Cops and comparable reality crime TV reflected cultural anxiety about drugs and violence and helped justify tough-on-crime policies and increased police presence in communities. True crime in our era reflects the power of the internet and social media in democratizing collective experience. There is now an unprecedented ability to meaningfully question or contest official accounts of events and political narratives. And citizens now have far greater understanding of the legal system.
People have packed City Hall to speak up about the need for more police accountability. It's a conversation happening in cities all across the country.
For instance, footage of George Floyd's 2020 arrest and murder was spread rapidly online and showed former officer Derek Chauvin kneeling on Floyd's neck for over 7 minutes. The official autopsy attributed Floyd's death to, quote, underlying health conditions and potential intoxicants, whereas a private autopsy done by the family found that the 46-year-old died of, quote, asphyxiation from sustained pressure. The footage of the event not only sparked widespread awareness and outrage, but helped change the outcome of the case where police repeatedly failed to do their duty, serve and protect their community.
It's been the constant trauma and reliving it over and over and over again, and we need to see some justice to feel like we're going somewhere.
Cops was canceled in 2020 by the Paramount Network in light of the global George Floyd protests, but was soon picked up by Fox Nation, a streaming companion to Fox News.
Step out. New Cops are only on Fox Nation.
In 2021, a law was passed in Texas preventing reality shows from working with law enforcement agencies. The change came after a 40-year-old man died from being repeatedly tased by police following a 22-minute car chase, all filmed for live PD.
Ambler's attorneys say poorly trained deputies could not recognize the medical needs of a man whose disability could cause him to die in custody.
Studies showed that use of force reports by police nearly doubled in the year following that agency's collaboration with the show, indicating that officers were more likely to use force when they knew they were going to be on TV. Regardless of where any of us fall on the political spectrum, we can all agree that the justice system should work to protect people from crime, violence, terror, and fear. Because policing touches on so many polemic issues like gun control, racism, incarceration, and so on, media representations of police carry extra weight. The polarization of how police are represented in today's true crime is a prime example of the way the genre embodies the cultural anxieties and issues of its era. Are police heroes or villains? It depends who you ask.
It's doing my job.
Whether your obsession is with the crimes themselves or with catching the killer, we've all experienced this tidal wave of crime content in recent years. So how did we get here? Where do we go?
If you're watching this video, this is the start of something major.
As we know, true crime in its various forms has been a staple of pop culture for hundreds of years. From 16th century sailors' ballads recounting gruesome murders to Netflix's latest miniseries, our morbid fascination with crime and brutality is pervasive.
This is the fall of a dynasty, a fall from grace.
There you are, scared for your life. It's either do or die.
But throughout the 2010s, true crime exploded into one of the most watched and most talked about media categories, elevated from trash TV and cozy mysteries into a cultural force.
Crime enthusiasts came from near and far for this year's CrimeCon.
MsMojo published over 100 true crime videos in 2023 alone. But are viewers experiencing true crime fatigue? Are we over the serial killer cinematic universe? Where does the genre go from here? A 2022 study found 34% of American adults who listened to a podcast in the last year said they regularly consume true crime podcasts. The same study found that true crime was the most common topic between the highest-rated podcasts on Apple and Spotify.
I did listen to Serial and I loved it.
I'm on episode 5, maybe?
I'm halfway in.
Another 2022 study found that half of Americans admitted to enjoying true crime, with 13% citing it as their personal favorite.
Murder show, I'm gonna watch a murder show. Late night true crime, this is my relaxing time.
But with popularity comes greater scrutiny. The more a topic is discussed, the more viewers seek to unpack its nuances, like in this miniseries, for example. So let's talk about where true crime is at today. We can look back at landmark works like In Cold Blood and Thin Blue Line as benchmarks of modern true crime. But let's be serious. The true crime boom got real in the 2010s. As the streaming revolution began to take root, viewers and listeners started experiencing stories in new ways.
We are in no way crime journalists or professionals, really. We're talking about the case conversationally as people who have been paying attention for a long time.
For one, streaming makes content available to anyone with a password on their own schedule, expanding the potential viewer base considerably compared to traditional TV or film. Secondly, streaming is as much a part of online culture as it is visual media culture, thanks to the expansion of online fandoms and social media.
Unsolved Mysteries Volume 4, Episode 2, this just released yesterday on Netflix. There's just no way that was an accident. I don't know. What do you guys think?
The internet provides new possibilities for engaging with the stories we consume, especially if their focus is on a mystery. A mystery is a puzzle. It puts the viewer in a position to hunt for clues, to draw their own conclusions in real life. Who doesn't want to be the one to crack the case?
Did you make the bomb?
No.
Liar!
It's a bank robbery, but it's a scavenger hunt.
I did nothing.
Who actually said, hey, let's rob a bank?
We know how true crime media reflects the issues of its time. So what kind of widespread cultural questions can it generate in digital space? HBO's The Jinx is a great viral example. The series investigates the suspicious deaths of 3 individuals all connected to New York real estate heir Robert Durst. The show features a lot of self-reflexive moments, as filmmaker Andrew Jarecki explores his own working relationship with Durst, who's an active and willing participant in the production.
If she was dead, I would not know where her body would be in the state of New York, or in the state of New Jersey, or in the Northern Hemisphere, or anything like that.
And the ending is absolutely explosive. This twisty, independent investigation ultimately helped lead to Durst's arrest and conviction in 2021. The internet was lit aflame by the series finale, some hailing it as one of the most shocking moments in TV history. But what is of note for us here is the discourse it generated in digital space. Fans carried topics that are usually limited to academia, such as body language analysis and objectivity in nonfiction storytelling, into the mainstream.
His tics are increasing. So that's showing that his anxiety is ramping up a little bit, his concern for what's happening. There's an issue here. That's an indicator of him lying at this point.
Making a Murderer is another example. This milestone series generated major discussions about mental health and criminal responsibility, documentary ethics, and bias in police work. Over 500,000 people signed an online petition to the White House in 2015, advocating for a pardon for central character Stephen Avery.
We're thankful that the story's finally out, the stuff that was shoved out of court.
Show them that we're out here fighting for them and that their injustice won't go unnoticed.
These are not necessarily activists or people linked to the case, but viewers who were moved by what they saw in the show. And that is the true power of nonfiction storytelling. Viewers are made to feel as if they have the complete story, an encyclopedia of the facts. And in an online context, fans find themselves in a position to take some level of action, to post something, to join an advocacy group, to get active in a forum, to sign a petition, to feel as though they too can be a participant in the execution of justice.
Lambert began looking into what happened to Kristen, chasing down leads and tracking down anyone with information.
I didn't know how many people were going to listen, but I knew that I could try to do a small part.
Netflix's Don't F with Cats, Hunting an Internet Killer, takes this concept even further. The series covers the internet sleuth-driven quest to identify an anonymous poster of animal cruelty videos, later identified as murderer Luca Magnotta. The core of this story is how random people online were able to identify this elusive figure, using clues from his videos.
Oh, that looks exactly like the Petro-Canada gas station that I see in the photo, Luca. And guess what? That large gray cement apartment building is directly behind it.
Modern true crime often questions the effectiveness of the criminal justice system, and this series empowers the independent PI roleplay that the internet makes possible. Anyone can be a detective, or even better than a detective, stepping in when the police can't do their job.
He was the journalist behind a podcast downloaded by millions that delved into Lynette Dawson's disappearance in 1982. It prompted new witnesses to come forward who've now testified in Chris Dawson's murder trial.
The internet allows viewers to themselves become part of the stories they consume. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, of course. The outcome of Don't F with Cats was positive, but this does mark an evolution. And what's interesting is how fresh technology brings new life to the content-consumer relationship in true crime, to the way audiences explore gruesome cases from a distance or try to crack a whodunit.
Her story and its mystery captivating the nation. Each new development being followed with clues and explainers by people on social media. Some actually helping detectives put the pieces together.
These are classic devices of mystery and true crime, but the internet allows consumers to dig far deeper into the nitty-gritty of the case at hand, easily accessing photos, archival documents, official reports, and bouncing ideas off other aficionados.
Her death was undoubtedly brutal. And now it seems like there is a shift happening with people saying that now that they've seen the crime scene photos, they don't believe that Dee Dee deserved that.
True crime fans now have far greater and deeper means to connect with it. This is inherently related to why we see a true crime explosion in this era. Podcasts are another tech innovation that contributes to this explosion. Radio may be somewhat passé, but the format makes content a hell of a lot more accessible when you're not planted in front of a screen. The podcast Serial, for example, is a major player in this true crime wave, an absolute phenomenon. The first podcast to win the Peabody Award, it holds a world record for the most downloaded podcast of all time.
They like complicated stories about complicated people who do complicated things.
Serial helped popularize true crime in podcast form, and its innovative storytelling kept viewers waiting with bated breath for the next reveal. This is another example of true crime being led by independent researchers, seeking to uncover problems with the system.
And I've done all the reporting around him, so tons of soldiers, friends and family, people in the State Department, White House, just sort of like all over the place to try to figure it out.
In the case of Adnan Syed, the central figure of season 1, Serial's popularity got absolutely everyone talking about his case, and the investigation ultimately helped change its outcome.
Now, a judge in the United States has quashed the murder conviction of an American man whose case gave rise to the true crime podcast Serial.
The Jinx, Making a Murderer, and Serial all debuted within about a year of each other. But let's talk about a different true crime sensation given life by streaming, Tiger King.
They can't find his body. Okay, we believe that she fed him to the tigers.
At a moment when everyone was suddenly stuck indoors, no work, no social life, Tiger King provided the exact niche story that could only be called comforting given the timing of its release, March 2020. This series has everything: murder, conspiracy, illegal zoos, mullets. Its home on Netflix allowed for a nostalgic collective viewing experience. As everyone's lives were flipped, seemingly everyone was also watching Tiger King.
Well, I've devoured all 7 episodes and I'm still craving more. So we've gathered some of the key players for a look back at the twists and turns of the Tiger King saga.
The so-called streaming revolution has carried the new wave of true crime by expanding its viewer base and viewers' ability to immerse themselves in these stories from the comfort of their own homes, especially in 2020 when we were literally stuck there. But what are the downsides of this genre explosion in the digital age? It's important that we talk about victim experience here. Are the victims of true crime stories ever really done justice through their representation? And what about the surviving families of victims?
I did watch it. I felt it was over the top. They didn't need to present it the way that they did. I think it was insensitive for the way it was done. I think they glamorized it.
We've already seen how shows like Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, delve into the mystique of a murderer's mind. And yes, several of his victims are depicted in the show. But really, the series is not about them. Their identities, their lives, and the tragedy of their stories are not the center of the show. The focus remains on Dahmer himself. And so, there emerges a cycle of re-victimization, where the real-life victims are killed off for show, while the murderer gets a Netflix-backed famous actor deep dive.
I sort of started with a blank slate with Dahmer. I wanted it to be very authentic. But in order to do that, I was going to have to go to really dark places.
The real victims are just plot devices in Jeffrey Dahmer's show. While it's contested by creator Ryan Murphy,
we reached out to about 20 of the victims' families and friends, trying to get input, trying to talk to people, and not a single person responded to us in that process.
Multiple families of Dahmer's victims claim they were never contacted prior to the show airing in 2022.
And the way he told the movie and showed the movie and lied about him contacting us, he didn't contact none of us. And he said that he did, Ryan Murphy.
As Eric Perry, the cousin of Dahmer victim Errol Lindsay, said, quote, "We're all one traumatic event away from the worst day of your life being reduced to your neighbor's favorite binge show." A point of opposition to this dynamic could be the 2017 Netflix series The Keepers, which covered the unsolved murder of Sister Kathy Sesnick in 1969 and a web of abuse in her Baltimore community. The series featured interviews with her students who were themselves victims of abuse at school and allowed them to tell the story through their own experiences, keeping Kathy at the core.
They both knew that I was walking down the hallway to hell. And but then I think of Sister Kathy and I think, well, maybe they were scared to death that he was going to kill them.
This created space for Kathy's story to be told without re-victimizing those involved and sensationalizing their trauma for profit. The narrative belongs to them and is recounted from their perspectives. And this is really the core ethical concern of true crime writ large. Is it fair to survivors of these tragedies to have their private lives and intimate family moments aired on TV? Mindy Pendleton, stepmother of Robert Mast, who was murdered in 2015, recounted begging the producers of Netflix's I Am a Killer to not feature their story. The episode aired without her permission or participation and featured his murderer detailing her side of the story. The episode was not about Robert, but about his killer through a lens of curiosity.
I made the choice. I took his life, and there's nothing I can do to undo it.
Victims' families have also cited the traumatizing effects of having their killed loved ones' lifestyle, decisions, risks, relationships, and so forth scrutinized in the public eye by armchair detectives with no real connection to the case.
This victim-blaming notion, what did the woman do to bring this upon herself? What did she wear? Why did she put herself in that position?
And this is an age-old question in nonfiction media. What responsibility do we have to the truth? What responsibility do we have to the real-life people and events we cover? There isn't really such a thing as pure truth in media, because what viewers are shown is filtered through so many layers of perception. The lens always omits more than it captures, regardless of a filmmaker's intentions.
You think that you know me as a person because you've watched my documentaries, you've read articles, you've done your research, but you don't know me as just Gypsy.
But true crime continues to push these boundaries for better or worse. A prime example is Monster and its deeply aestheticized telling of tragic historical events. Some viewers praised its vision and performances.
It's a testament to Evan Peters' performance. He's a remarkable actor.
Others criticized its potentially glorifying effect.
They either go way over the top or they're glamorizing the killer.
Can the series just exist as entertainment? Or should there be a higher bar for sensitivity and historical accuracy? It depends who you ask. But given the enduring presence of true crime across hundreds of years, it's clear the genre is here to stay. It will continue to evolve in line with the changing social concerns of its time, and perhaps given the sheer volume of formats and platforms available today, we can expect it to expand in different directions, serving a broad range of tastes. All things will find their fandom.
Such a good form of escapism right now. I feel like it's so ridiculous, it's so outrageous.
With that being said, the ethics of true crime remain up for debate and deeply subjective. We've seen how true crime can reflect biases in our society and, in turn, influence viewers' perception of the issues it covers. Rather than focusing on the unattainable bar of truth, perhaps the better measure here is honesty.
So we have tried to surround ourselves with as many experts as we could. The story we're telling is a story about humanity, about sacrifice, about friendship, people who find each other in the darkest hours and walk towards the light together.
Does the creator tell us the limits of their research? Does the content polarize characters into good guys and bad guys? Who are you made to identify with in the story? Then again, if you're just along for the ride and want to enjoy a juicy mystery, that's okay too. We're all fans here. But at the end of the day, it's important to keep in mind that these juicy mysteries were not just written to entertain us. They are the stories of real people who lived through very real events, and they could happen to you too. Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from MsMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.